Good evening, and thank you for joining us. This is a public meeting for the proposed draft Remedial Action Plan, also known as a RAP, for the Alameda Triangle Areas 1 and 6 project, located on the northwest corner of the intersection of Imperial Highway and Fernwood Avenue in Lynwood. My name is Teresa Hernandez. I'm a public participation specialist with the Department of Toxic Substances Control. So I apologize for that. I just turned on my camera. My name is Teresa Hernandez. I'm a public participation specialist with the Department of Toxic Substances Control, and I'll be your meeting facilitator this evening. If you need technical assistance, please use the raise hand function on the toolbar at the bottom of your Zoom screen. This meeting is being recorded, and by participating in this meeting, you are agreeing to be recorded. We ask that you select your preferred language, English or Spanish, so that you will be able to fully participate in the meeting. To do so, please click on the globe icon at the bottom of your screen. You will see three options: off, English, and Spanish. Please select English or Spanish. Again, you will need to select a language to participate in the meeting. Please choose English or Spanish now. Bienvenidos y gracias por acompañarnos esta tarde. Si desea participar en esta reunión en español, seleccione el idioma en la parte inferior de la ventana de Zoom y luego seleccione español. Si necesita asistencia técnica, por favor levante la mano o escriba en el chat. Please refer to the diagrams on the screen if you're having trouble selecting a language. Also, thank you, Luis Ramon Rodriguez, who is interpreting on the Zoom Spanish line, and Maria de la Luz, who is interpreting in person at the Lynwood City Hall Council chambers. Presentation materials in English and Spanish are available in the project's EnviroStore webpage at envirostore.dtsc.ca.gov/public. That's EnviroStore, ENIVIROSTOR.dtsc.ca.gov/public, and search for Alameda Triangle, ALAMEDA Triangle, TRIANGLE, in the search toolbar. Audio interpretation is available through Zoom and in person at the Lynwood City Hall Council chambers. Closed captions are on for this meeting. You can move the box or turn them off by clicking the CC icon. Please note that we are hosting this meeting from different locations and request that you bear with us if there's a time lag or other technical issues. We sincerely appreciate your patience, understanding, and cooperation in making this a successful meeting. To ensure that all meeting participants can fully participate, we developed the following agreements. This is a shared space, so please be cautious of this and courteous to your fellow meeting attendees. Be mindful of the space you are taking up and give others the opportunity to express themselves as well. You may be muted at any time during this meeting. We remind you again to please make your language selection, English or Spanish, so that you will be able to fully participate in the meeting. To ensure all meeting participants receive the same information, and especially those joining receiving interpretation, please speak clearly and at an even pace. The Q&A feature is enabled, and you can use it to type questions throughout the presentation. Please wait for the public comment period to provide public comments for the record. The Department of Toxic Substances Control, known as DTSC, is hosting this meeting. Tonight, we will be presenting and accepting public comments related to the proposed draft Remedial Action Plan for the Alameda Triangle Areas 1 and 6 project, located on the northwest corner of the intersection of Imperial Highway and Fernwood Avenue in Lynwood. I want to thank you all for taking the time to join us this evening amongst your many competing priorities. The meeting is scheduled from 5 to 7 p.m. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to provide information about the proposed draft Remedial Action Plan, or RAP, respond to your questions, and accept public comments. Brooke Booth, the project manager for the Alameda Triangle project, will give the presentation, followed by a question and answer period that I will help facilitate. The Q&A is specifically to answer any clarifying questions you may have of the presentation. After the Q&A period, we will begin the public comment session for the record. All public comments will be responded to and included in the response to comments document, which will be uploaded to the Buyer Store and sent to those providing their contact information. If you would like a copy of this document sent to you, please send your contact information to me via email at teresa.hernandez@dtsc.ca.gov. That's Teresa, TERESA Hernandez, HERNANDEZ @dtsc.ca.gov. And note if you would like to receive it by email or mail. With that, I will now invite our presenter for tonight's meeting, Brooke Boo, the DTSC Project Manager, to begin our presentation. Brooke?
Thank you, Teresa. I'll now discuss and introduce the DTSC project team for the Alameda Triangle Areas 1 and 6 project. I am Brooke Boo. I am the project manager. My background is in environmental science. With us tonight, we have Ephraim, who is the DTSC staff toxicologist. We have Andrew, who's the senior geologist. We have Ben, who's the senior hazardous substance engineer. We have Teresa, who has been introduced and is again DTSC's public participation specialist. We have Megan Hearn, who is my supervisor and is the unit chief of the Office of Brownfields Project Management Unit. We also have Candace Hill, who is the senior environmental planner for DTSC and specializes in the California Environmental Quality Act, also known as CEQA. Both Megan and Candace will not be attending this meeting due to scheduling conflicts. Myself, Teresa, Ephraim, Andrew, and Ben will all be available for the questions and answers session at the end of this presentation. Next slide, please. So a little bit about DTSC's role. DTSC is the lead regulatory oversight agency for the cleanup of the Alameda Triangle Areas 1 and 6 project. DTSC's mission is to protect California's people, communities, and environment from harmful effects of toxic substances. And we'll go more into detail of DTSC's mission on the next slide. DTSC is responsible for overseeing the technical aspect of the project, meaning overseeing the investigation and cleanup of the contaminated site. However, DTSC is not responsible for development decisions. Next slide, please. The mission statement for DTSC can be pulled off of our online website. DTSC works to protect people, communities, and the environment from harmful chemicals. Our work is mission focused on accomplishing this by restoring contaminated sites, enforcing hazardous waste laws, reducing hazardous waste generation, compelling the development of safer consumer products. DTSC's vision is of all California thriving in a healthy environment. For this specific project, we are looking to fulfill our mission through the Equitable Community Revitalization Grant, also known as ECRG. As part of DTSC's Site Mitigation and Restoration Program, we are expediting the investigation, cleanup, and upcoming redevelopment at this historically vulnerable community. Next slide, please. The public comment period started on May 13th, 2024 and goes through June 13th, 2024. We're currently halfway through the public comment period. Please submit all public comments by June 13th, 2024, as this is the last day of the public comment period. To do so, you can email me at brooke.boo@dtsc.ca.gov. That's brooke.bu@dtsc.ca.gov. You also can send mail to me specifically, Brooke Boo, the project manager, at the DTSC Regional Cypress office. The address is 5796 Corporate Avenue in Cypress, California, 90630. Next slide, please. So to discuss a little bit about where we started with this project, where we're at now, and where the project will be going. The voluntary agreement was signed between DTSC and the City of Lynwood back in 2022. Once that was signed, we held various scoping meetings to determine the best course of action in terms of conducting environmental investigations at the site. After the scoping meeting, the evaluation process began. The evaluation and investigation process included a supplemental site investigation, followed by a supplemental site investigation addendum. And we'll discuss that further on later in the presentation. The next step is a risk assessment. This is called the Human Health Risk Assessment, also known as an HHRA. For this specific project, the HHRA was completed as part of the cleanup plan and is included in the Remedial Action Plan document that is currently out for public comment. The Human Health Risk Assessment is a process to determine if contaminants detected at a site are of concern to human health and the environment. The Human Health Risk Assessment falls under the evaluation step of the voluntary agreement process and involves using environmental data to estimate the nature, the magnitude, and the probability of adverse health effects on people who may be exposed to the contaminated media, now and in the future. This contaminated media could be soil, soil gas, groundwater, surface water. Voluntary agreement projects such as this use the Human Health Risk Assessment to make decisions about allowable use or reuse of the property and to facilitate an effective assessment and cleanup strategy to ensure safe end use. The next step is the remedy selection. This is the process that we're in now, and it's circled in red here on the screen. The Remedial Action Plan, also known as the RAP, is the document that is currently out for public comment. We are currently halfway through the public comment period, and as part of this step, we also consider the California Environmental Quality Act. DTSC is required by the California Environmental Quality Act, also known as CEQA, to evaluate whether implementation of the cleanup activities will have potentially significant adverse impacts on the environment. Pursuant to the requirements of the California Environmental Quality Act, the City of Lynwood, as lead agency, prepared the Lynwood Transit Area Specific Plan Environmental Impact Report, also known as the EIR or Specific Plan Amendment, dated in March 2018. The city approved this document on April 2nd, 2018. As a responsible agency, DTSC completed an independent analysis of potential environmental impacts associated with the remediation activities identified in the draft Remedial Action Plan. An addendum to the Environmental Impact Report, again known as the EIR, incorporating the environmental evaluation of the proposed Remedial Action Plan, remediation to the city's project, has been prepared by DTSC. A Notice of Determination, also known as an NOD, will be filed with the Office of Planning and Research, also known as the State Clearinghouse, after the Remedial Action Plan is approved. In addition, an air quality analysis was also prepared to analyze the emissions from the number of truck trips required to move the excavated soil off-site, and concluded that emissions were below the South Coast Air Quality Management District requirements. If you have any questions related to the California Environmental Quality Act, please contact DTSC's Candace Hill, who is with our environmental planning team. I can provide her information at the end of the meeting if anyone is interested in further information, so please ask this during our question and answer session at the end of this presentation. The final step is implementation. The city's environmental consultant will issue a remedial design implementation plan, also known as the RDIP, to DTSC, which will indicate exactly how the city plans to carry out the cleanup. Once the remedial design implementation plan is approved by DTSC, cleanup implementation begins with the consideration of public comments provided during the public comment period. Next slide, please. So to discuss a little bit of the background, the area highlighted in red here is the site. It includes areas 1 and area 6 and is approximately 5.1 acres. The surrounding areas in the Alameda Triangle include areas 2, 3, 4, and 5, and are considered to be neighboring properties. A little bit of the background for Area 1. In 1903, Area 1 was used as a railroad right-of-way. Between 1905 and 1930, this railroad line connected Los Angeles to Santa Ana using electric trolley passenger cars. By 1930, the tracks were used to transport freight, and by 1965, Area 1 was vacant and also occupied by access roads. The background for Area 6, between 1951 and 1972, Area 6 was occupied by a rubber processing plant known as Master Processing. By 1975, the lot was vacant, and by 1989, 3 underground storage tanks associated with the former rubber processing plant, including 2 10,000-gallon tanks and 1 2,000-gallon tank, were excavated, washed, and removed. According to the Regional Water Quality Control Board, the tanks did not impact soil or groundwater, and the Department of Transportation reportedly issued closure. By 1994, Area 6 was vacant. Areas 2, 3, 4, and 5 are situated to the southwest of our site and were formerly occupied for auto repair and manufacturing operations. Specifically, Area 4 was formerly occupied by Magnatech, a manufacturer of digital power and motion control systems, such as cranes and hoists. Next slide, please. So previous sampling referenced on this slide was conducted at the site between 1988 and 2018. Area 1 was investigated between 2005 and 2018 and included soil and soil vapor sampling. Area 6 was investigated between 1988 and 2018 and included soil, soil vapor, and groundwater sampling. Based on the results of this previous sampling, the main chemical of potential concern, also known as a COPC, was arsenic, possibly from the use to control weeds on our site and even the surrounding sites. Additional chemicals of potential concern included total petroleum hydrocarbons, lead, and polychlorinated biphenyls. In addition, volatile organic compounds were detected in soil vapor, potentially related to the historical use of Area 6 as a rubber processing plant, and also potentially from off-site industrial properties. Next slide, please. Based on the previous sampling up to 2018, 4 potential areas of concern, also known as PAOCs, were identified at the site, and we have a map depicting these areas on the next slide. PAOC 1 includes the historical rail line of Area 1. PAOC 2 includes the limited polychlorinated biphenyls impacted area in Area 1. PAOC 3 includes the potential soil vapor and groundwater impacts from adjacent properties associated with industrial use. And PAOC 4 includes the underground storage tanks in the southern part of Area 6, as well as the entire historical rubber processing plant area. Next slide, please. So PAOC 1, the historical rail line, is highlighted in purple. PAOC 2 includes the small polychlorinated biphenyl impacted area in green. And this is actually the former access road to the Magnatech property, which was formerly located in Area 4, the adjacent site. PAOC 4 is in yellow and includes the area of the former underground storage tanks and former master processing operations. And just as a note, PAOC 3 is not shown on the map. PAOC 3 is the potential soil vapor and groundwater impacts, and they were considered to be general and site-wide. Next slide, please. So recent DTSC oversight evaluations were conducted in 2023. The first investigation is known as the Supplemental Site Investigation, conducted in July of 2023. Based on those results, total petroleum hydrocarbons as diesel, the impacts to those in soil were almost fully delineated. Lead impacts in soil were delineated, and the extent of arsenic impacted soil was not fully delineated. Not fully delineated means that the edges or boundaries of the arsenic impacted areas were not yet clearly defined. In addition, several volatile organic compounds were detected in soil vapor above their respected screening levels. And as a note, screening levels are derived using DTSC modified exposure and toxicity factors. Next slide, please. Thank you. Following the supplemental site investigation was the supplemental site investigation addendum conducted on the property in October of 2023. Based on these results, metals, including arsenic, were not considered to be an issue in groundwater. Metals in groundwater were not detected above their respective maximum contaminant levels, also known as NCLs, meaning all detections of metals in groundwater did not exceed the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency standards for drinking water. In addition, volatile organic compounds, including benzene and tetrachloroethylene, also known as PCE, were detected in soil vapor above respective commercial and residential screening levels. As such, they were considered to be a potential issue in soil vapor. Next slide, please. All right, so the planned redevelopment. There's two phases for the planned redevelopment. Phase 1 is the commercial development area, highlighted in blue. Phase 2 is the residential development area, highlighted in green. The commercial development area is planned to be single-level construction to include shops and activated green spaces. This includes 3.3 acres and includes the southeastern portion of Area 1 and all of Area 6. The residential development area is planned to be 90 affordable housing units for rent and 24 townhomes for sale. This includes 1.7 acres and includes the northwestern portion of Area 1. Next slide, please. So to discuss the draft Remedial Action Plan dated January 2024, again, this is the document that's currently out for public comment. The Remedial Action Plan, also known as the RAP, is the remedy selection document for a non-emergency remedial action at a hazardous substance release site. The Remedial Action Plan includes a summary of the site background, use history, previous investigation and cleanup actions. It includes a risk evaluation. A risk evaluation is used to check if there's risk off-site. Current contamination distribution and cleanup goals to be achieved. Includes screening of cleanup technologies and conceptual design of multiple alternatives. Evaluation and comparison of alternatives must include an analysis of the alternatives considered, evaluated against a set of criteria, including effectiveness, ability to implement, and cost. This will be discussed on the next slide. Selected remedies for all impacted media, consideration and compliance with the California Environmental Quality Act, also known as CEQA, and the public participation requirements, which include preparation of a community profile report, public notice, minimum 30-day comment period, which we're in right now, and following that, preparation of a written responsiveness summary. Next slide, please. So on this slide, we discuss the draft Remedial Action Plan alternatives that were evaluated. For this document that's currently out for public review, 5 alternatives were compared. The first alternative was no action. No action is always the baseline for comparison. Alternative 2 is excavation and offsite disposal. Excavation is the physical removal of impacted soil. Alternative 3, excavation and on-site strategic placement and encapsulation. Excavation and encapsulation. Encapsulation is a term for isolating the contaminated soil and preventing contact with any additional soil. Impacted soil would be placed within engineered containment cells, strategically placed soil management cells. The engineered containment cell would consist of a cap comprised of gravel and asphalt and/or concrete pavement. The cap would provide a physical barrier to mitigate potential exposure to the impacted soil. Alternative 4, on-site stabilization and reuse. Soil stabilization transforms the soil so that it is perfect for paving and maintains or improves the stability of the weak soils to achieve an engineering goal. It stabilizes the contaminants of concern, specifically the metals in soil, with help of stabilizing agents such as cement. The soil would be excavated, mixed with a binder to stabilize the contaminants of concern, and returned to the excavation within the commercial redevelopment area. Last is alternative 5, on-site stabilization and off-site disposal. Soil would be excavated, mixed with the binder, exported off-site for disposal or treatment. After impacted material was removed, confirmation samples would be collected at the bottom and side walls of the excavated area to verify that all impacted material above the cleanup goals was removed. Based on comparison against a set of criteria, including effectiveness, impact to the environment, technology availability and implementability, and cost, alternative 2 is the selected remedy. Next slide, please. So this discusses alternative 2, the selected remedy, excavation and off-site disposal of impacted soil. And placement of a concrete cap above impacted soil left in place will be considered only if determined necessary, and this will only be for the commercial development area. If this ends up being the case, there will be recordation of a land use covenant, also known as an LUC, for the commercial development area. And this is, again, only if residual impacts are left in place. Remediation of the residential development area will be to unrestricted land use. No impacted soil above the arsenic ambient concentrations for Southern California will be left in place. Again, these ambient concentrations are specific to arsenic in soil, which has background levels in the state of California. The initial depth that soil will be excavated based on arsenic impacts in the residential development area will vary depending on the location and based on the known impacts. Initial depths will vary from 2.5 to 12 feet below ground surface, with the majority of the locations being 7 feet or less. Again, the capping and the land use covenant will only be placed if deemed necessary on the commercial development portion. A land use covenant is an institutional control that helps protect unsafe exposure to hazardous substances on public or private property. A land use covenant is a tool that DTSC utilizes when exposure to contamination can be controlled through specifically defined use restrictions for a site. They are used when DTSC has determined that it is safe to leave specific types of contamination at a property, as long as defined restrictions are adhered to. In this case, residential use will not be permitted on the commercial development area, and as such, this area will be limited to commercial use. Next slide, please. There are no proposed remedies for soil vapor at this time. Confirmation soil vapor samples will be collected after soil excavation and before construction of the buildings to determine if a vapor intrusion mitigation system is mandated or needed. Although volatile organic compounds in soil vapor at the site are not considered to be a large issue at this time, we are considering the unlikely but potential need for a vapor intrusion mitigation system. A vapor intrusion mitigation system uses features such as vents and barriers to block and divert vapors from building up underneath the structure. Based on the confirmation soil vapor sampling results, additional sampling may be warranted, as discussed further in the upcoming slides. The scope of the confirmation soil vapor sampling that will be conducted after soil excavation and prior to construction will be provided to DTSC following the remedial excavation. Next slide, please. Following the public comment period, DTSC will address comments received. If no substantial revisions to the remedial action plan are necessary, DTSC will approve the cleanup plan. The cleanup plan will then be implemented, and a land use covenant, if deemed necessary, will be implemented on the commercial development area. Confirmation soil vapor sampling will take place again after soil excavation before the buildings are constructed, and potentially again. To be more specific, after the impacted shallow soil is excavated and removed from the site, soil vapor will be evaluated for residual total petroleum hydrocarbons, oxygenates, and volatile organic compounds near the future building foundation. If concentrations in soil vapor exceed the projected indoor air screening level, and this level will be determined using the future building attenuation factor, then sub-slab soil vapor samples will be collected. And the final details of this potentially needed sampling plan have not yet been determined and will be submitted to DTSC if necessary. Sub-slab samples are samples collected beneath the building foundation, and an attenuation factor is an estimate of the decimal fraction of vapor phase chemicals that pass through a barrier and enter indoor space. If the results of the sub-slab sampling exceed the projected indoor air screening level, indoor air sampling will be conducted after construction of the building and prior to occupancy. Again, based on the confirmation soil vapor results, a vapor intrusion mitigation system with operations and maintenance may be mandated by DTSC as part of the new building construction plan. And another note, this will be determined before the buildings are developed, as the vapor intrusion mitigation system would be part of the new construction. Next slide, please. Here's some additional project information. You can find additional information for the project and a copy of the draft Remedial Action Plan and public comment documents on the site's EnviroStore website listed here. You can also find hard copies of these documents at the DTSC Cypress Regional Office and the Lynwood City Clerk's Office. And the addresses are also listed on this slide for you. And with that, I will pass it back over to Teresa. Thank you.
Thank you, Brooke, for your presentation. As a reminder, we will be taking public comments after the Q&A session. Please hold all comments for the official comment record until that time has been announced. We'll go to the comment if the Q&A ends earlier. And while we recognize that there is limited time for comments, people may also provide comments via email or email. If you have a question or a comment, please raise your virtual hand using the toolbar at the bottom of your Zoom screen or type it into the Q&A. We will do our best to respond to questions in the order we receive them. We will begin by taking a couple questions from those participating in person at the Lynwood City Hall Council Chambers. Lauren, is there anyone there with a question?
There's no one here with questions.
Okay, we will now take some questions from those with their hands raised, which I don't see anybody with their hands raised. So we'll go over to the Q&A. We have one question. Are the homes going to be Section 8?
John and Lauren, I'll let you guys answer this question.
Lauren, John, if you are speaking, you are muted.
Hi, good evening, John Yonai with Sierra West and Steve Lynwood. We will define that, I guess, as we get further into the development. We're not sure. I'm sorry. Yeah, a little cross discussion going on. We've been looking at a number of affordable types of units for the property. I cannot define if Section 8 will be included in that, but that can be brought up with the future developer.
Thank you, John, for your response. I would like to check in with our interpreters to see if we have any questions from those participating in the Spanish. Luis, would you please let us know if there are any questions from those participating in the Spanish Zoom line? Thank you. I don't see any more questions or raised hands. So we will now begin the public comment session of the meeting. The format will be similar to the question and answer period. If you would like to verbalize your comment, please raise your hand. If you would like to provide your comment in writing, we will display the ways to comment at the end of the meeting. Lauren, is there anyone there with a comment? at the city chambers?
No one here with comment.
Okay. I don't see any questions in the Q&A, and I don't see anybody's hands raised at this time. So we'll go ahead. As a reminder, the public comment period opened up on May 13th, 2024 and will conclude June 13th, 2024. Please submit all comments by June 13th, 2024. Written comments can be submitted to Brooke Boo via email or mail. Email brookeboo@dtsc.ca.gov or U.S. mail Brooke Boo Project Manager at 5796 Corporate Avenue in Cypress, 90630. We have one other question that came in, and that question is, what's the estimated time to break ground? Brooke?
Wait, this
I
is
can-
John Yonai again, and we're hoping that breaking ground will take place for the project itself, excluding the remediation activities, which we will assume will hopefully start within the next 5 to 6 months. That breaking ground for the project itself will be within the next 12 months, maybe 6 to 8 months on the commercial component, and then 12 months out for the residential.
Thank you for that response, John. Is there any more questions, comments? Lauren, on your end?
Nothing on my end.
Okay. Okay, I don't see any other questions and or comments. So with that, I would thank you all for your interest in participating. Please be sure, actually, I apologize for that. You have one more question. Is the street going to be wider on Fernwood?
I have not been advised as to whether that's a yes or no. Lauren or John may be able to comment further on that from the city.
The current plans for the Burnwood Street does not anticipate an expansion of the street itself. And so we assume that it will remain as is in terms of width.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, no other questions. Thank you for your interest in participating. Please be sure to provide your written comment by the end of the public comment period. Thank you again and stay safe.